You've done the research and you think that eating a whole food, plant-based diet is associated with longevity, lower risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, dementia, and a healthy weight. You've even found some recipes that sound pretty good, but man, oh man, your family is not on the same page.
I'm Dr. Vicki Petz Casper. I practiced obstetrics and gynecology for 20 years until I landed on the other side of the sheets as a very sick patient. When my own body betrayed me, I took a handful of pills to manage my disease and another handful to counteract the side effects. My health was out of control. Through surgery, medications, and lots of prayers, I regained my strength only to face another diagnosis. My doctor challenged me to make radical changes through lifestyle medicine. Now I feel great and I want to help you make changes that make a difference. Healthy Looks Great on You podcast takes you to many medical schools so you can learn the power of lifestyle medicine. If you're ready to take control of your health, you're in the right place. Whether you're focused on prevention or you're trying to manage a condition, I'll give you practical steps to start your own journey toward better health, because healthy looks great on you.
I started exploring a whole food, plant-based diet when the word pre-diabetes appeared in my medical record. By the way, that word has disappeared and I'm convinced that my diet is the reason. In fact, there is a mountain of evidence that shows multiple health benefits to eating this way. But there are also lots of obstacles that make it feel as challenging as climbing Mount Everest. And mention it to the carnivores in your home, it is perilous indeed. The whole mindset shift of not eating meat with every single meal is tectonic. Bacon in the morning, turkey on the sandwich at lunch, and pork chops, burgers, steaks, or even chicken with dinner is the norm. When I first made the change, I went from eating meat about 14 times a week to 3 to 4. I heard you. You just asked out loud, what if I don't get enough protein? Okay, let's talk about that. The concern over getting enough protein has been driven by a mix of marketing, the fitness culture, and legitimate but sometimes misunderstood nutritional science. Protein is associated with power, muscle mass, strength, and energy. But how much power do you need, and can you actually get enough from plants? Have you seen my biceps? I didn't get big old muscles from eating meat. I got them from consistent resistance training. It's true, you need protein and essential amino acids for tissue repair, hormone production, enzymes, immune function, for all of your body to function properly. But when you get your protein from animal sources, you get a fair amount of animal fat in the package. And therein lies the problem. Oh wait, you can get it from a supplement, right? Protein powders, you can add those to your shakes. You can find bars that say protein in capital letters across the front. Put them in smoothies, cookies, and even water. You might say the protein marketers have effectively flexed their muscles because it's a $20+ billion industry that feeds off of people's fears of not getting enough of what most people get enough of. Even my mom wanted me to take her to the store to buy this protein shake that her friends at assisted living had given her. Now, to be fair, as people age, sometimes they don't get enough protein and they actually have higher needs. But my mom eats 3 meals a day and gets plenty. And the best thing she can do to maintain muscle mass is keep doing her squats. She even went to the workout room and asked for light hand weights. That's my mom. I come by it honestly. In a second, we're going to go to mini medical school and discuss renal function to make sure some of you aren't trying to fry your kidneys. But first, let's talk about high protein diets. I'll admit, you can lose weight with a high protein diet because it keeps you feeling full. But a high-fat diet is not going to be good for your cholesterol or your heart. And I'm going to tell you a healthier way to feel full. Now, if you're a bodybuilder, you're going to need a lot more protein than the average person. But if the only body you're trying to build is one that fits comfortably into your clothes, feels energized and strong, and lasts on the outside as well as the inside for however many days the Lord has appointed you on this earth, then maybe you only need the recommended 0.8 grams per kilograms of body weight. Unless you're elderly or active, and I hope you are, then bump it up to 1 to 1.2 grams per kilograms. Now, listen close, because this is where you and I can get lost in the numbers. That was 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight unless you're elderly or active. But those of us who live in the United States need a calculator to convert our pounds to kilos or kilos to pounds so that when we hear those numbers thrown around, we don't get confused. So let me try saying it in slang English. If your daily activity consists mostly of screen time, then you need a minimum of 0.36 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So let's say you weigh 170 pounds, that's the average weight for a woman in this country. Then multiply that by 0.36 and you need 61 grams of protein a day. Of course, if you're going to the gym several times a week, and actually huffing and puffing and working up a sweat, you may need as much as 77 grams a day. And that also depends on your age. So for your reference, I put a protein calculator in the show notes because there are some variables you need to consider when calculating your unique needs. But here's the deal. You can get enough protein from eating plant-based. Now, I'm not really one to advocate counting much of anything when it comes to eating. I mean, wouldn't it just be more fun to enjoy your meal rather than converting it to a mathematical experience? I always hated math. Just eat whole food, mostly plants, and a variety. You'll get all the nutrients you need without the trash you don't need. You do need enough protein, you just don't necessarily need more. Think better quality rather than more quantity. And if you do eat mostly plants, you absolutely need to be more conscious to get adequate protein. For me, beans are a great source. And speaking of beans, let's go to mini medical school now because too much protein can damage those little bean-shaped organs in your body. In the United States, 37 million people have chronic kidney disease. Some of them don't know it. Like wrinkles and saggy skin, the risk increase with age. High blood pressure and diabetes are major risk factors. And you probably know that the kidneys serve as a filter for your blood. They've got like a million little nephrons that are always doing a cleanup job. They remove waste and fluid that your body doesn't need. And in addition to being a fluid balancing and waste management site, they also have a little factory that cranks out red blood cells too. Your kidneys play a role in overall nutrition as well as bone health and blood pressure regulation. Perfectly healthy kidneys can handle a lot of protein, but know your needs and consider the whole package when it comes to protein. And just so you know, you can grow your own. Listen to my interview on the Beginner's Garden with Jill McSheehy to learn more. And when I talk about confusing numbers, that might be included as a bonus. All right, now you're armed with information and motivation to eat more plants and less meat. But excuse me, your spouse isn't there yet. In my home, I do all the cooking, and I love it. In fact, when I first met my husband, he was well known to the DoorDash driver, and the only meal he fixed for himself was microwaved hot dogs. When the microwave went kaput, he actually asked me how he was ever going to eat a home-cooked meal. That was shortly before I rescued him in marriage and took over the meal planning. Whew! Earlier I mentioned that I went from 14 servings of meat a week to 3 to 4. Now, we had a commuter marriage for the first year, and I could maintain that schedule and fix dinner with meat as the centerpiece the 3 to 4 nights a week that I was there and still eat plant-based when I was at my house. We finally moved in together full-time during our second year of marriage. I started cooking hybrid meals. It's not terribly difficult. I'm thinking things like stir fry or pasta. You can fix those with all the great whole grains and veggies, and then have a separate side of meat for your carnivores to add to the dish after you've fixed your plate. I make grits with nutritional yeast to give them a cheesy flavor, and I top mine with succotash and his with shrimp. Only problem with that dish is he wants me to cook the roux with bacon grease. Now, you know I'm not the best cook, but I am pretty savvy when it comes to creativity in the kitchen. So I made tacos and soups with things like beans and mushrooms for me and a side of ground beef for you-know-who. We were both in our late 50s when we met, so I had no intentions of trying to change his diet. But since we shared the table, some change was inevitable. And here's what happened. One day he said, I wouldn't mind having a meatless meal once a week. Now, he's not the social media type, so I'm guessing that Meatless Monday wasn't on his radar and was not his motivation. He just saw me fill up and feel good without the beef. After a while, he noticed some benefits, and he suggested that we start eating 2 plant-based meals a week. You want to know a little secret? When I did those hybrid meals, I gradually decreased the portions of meat, not deceptively, just because I noticed he ate less and less meat, and I didn't want to be wasteful. One of my favorite cookbooks is The Blue Zones, and there are lots of great plant-based recipes. I'll put a link in the show notes. I also interviewed Terry Edwards on this podcast because I saw her post a lot of delicious plant-based recipes on Facebook. So once a week, I just started serving a rainbow of plants. Mostly fresh, but frozen is a good option when you're in a bind for time and you haven't been to the store. And that's why I created a free pantry guide of 10 items you can keep in the pantry and 10 to keep in the freezer, so you can literally throw together a whole food meatless meal even if you got home late and didn't have a plan. That is my superpower. Because not only is eating plant-based harder if you live with a carnivore, but eating out is the real Achilles heel for me. Yes, restaurants are offering a lot more plant-based options, but I'm not sure processed fake meat is a better alternative. And I promise you the waiter will ask, would you like to add a protein? And trust me, I know from experience, they will look at you really funny if you say yes. Please add edamame. Most Sunday nights we eat at a Mexican restaurant, and bless their heart, they're trying. They've added some plant-based options. Well, sort of. They're usually covered in cheese, and unless they're blending up cashews with nutritional yeast, that's dairy. It comes from a cow, not a plant. Ditto for sour cream. Cow, not plant. Anyway, they've added a cauliflower bowl, which is fantastic. Last night they asked if I wanted ground beef, steak, or chicken. Those are the 3 options. And I said, just add beans. Moral of the story is enunciate beans with an N or you'll get beef with an F. I get it. They sound a lot alike and the majority of people want the meat. My point is that eating out is hard. And eating at home is hard too because we're all so busy. And without advanced preparation, we usually let convenience and hunger get the best of our commitment to eat healthier. Check out that pantry guide that I created at healthylooksgreatonyou.com/pantry guide and see if it doesn't help you overcome that. Use my simple, fast recipes, or better yet, start experimenting and make your own. And I'd love for you to share them with me. When you are following a recipe at home, making swaps makes it more doable. Use mushrooms when a recipe calls for meat. You can roast or grill cauliflower, zucchini, and other veggies. You can substitute beans for beef or chicken, and you can even make creamy sauces with nuts in a blender. Because here's what happens. Once you start reducing meat intake, your digestive system has a harder time when you do eat meat. Now, the same happens with fiber, but Fiber is the key to feeling full and nurturing your gut microbiome. I call it the secret to staying on any diet. Gut health is an evolving science that is linked to a healthy immune system, a better mood, more restorative sleep, as well as hormone balance. But the standard American diet is terribly fiber deficient, and fiber is key. It keeps you feeling full. And there are lots of great sources so that you can get the recommended 22 to 48 grams a day, depending on your age and sex. And I put a link to the episode in the show notes where I talk about the different types of fiber and sources at healthylooksgreatonyou.com/the secret to staying on a diet. But I'll give you a hint. You are not going to find any fiber in animal products because fiber is only found in plants. Now, on the other hand, vitamin B12 is only found in animal products. So if you go all in, you need to take a supplement. And that's about the only time you'll hear me mention the need to take a supplement. But if you live with a carnivore and you're considering making the switch to a whole food, plant predominant meal, it helps to cook a little chicken breast or ground beef and serve it on the side of your otherwise fiber-packed meal. So try it and see what happens. And I bet you'll see the same shift I saw at my house. Because when you eat a variety of plants rich in fiber and rich in nutrients, you'll feel good and you'll notice an impact on your health. And as always, healthy looks great on you.
The information contained in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not considered to be a substitute for medical advice. You should continue to follow up with your physician or healthcare provider and take medication as prescribed. Though the information in this podcast is evidence-based, new research may develop and recommendations may change.